Welcome everyone for this webcast, and our theme for the today is on the World Cancer Day. The theme is how to eradicate cancer by 2050, and I have with me a esteemed panel of specialists and various professionals in the field of cancer. I'd like to welcome first Dr. Balamurgan, Director Oncology Care, GE Healthcare, to deliver his welcome address. Dr. Balamurgan.
Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me for this particular panel discussion. And today, the World Cancer Day, I'd like to bring up a few points around India cancer infrastructure. So, if you look at it, close to 1.2 million cancer patients every year in India detected. And every year, the mortality is close to 700,000 patients who actually will lose them in every year because of the cancer. The issue in India is 80 to 90% of lung and prostate cancer detected at stage 3 or 4. It's a late stage, and 50 to 60% of breast cancer patients detected very late stage. This is mainly because the lack of infrastructure today available. If you look at it overall, India infrastructure cancer, close to 400 linear accelerator installed in India, over 100 PET CTs are installed in India. If you look at this medical equipment penetration, 65% of them still penetrated only in metro cities, and because the patient has to travel from tier 1 and tier 2 cities to metro city for diagnosis and staging and scans, so it takes a lot of time and money, and because of that the late stage this one. So if we need to really address this issue, we need to move into how do we move the cancer infrastructure from metro to tier 1 and tier 2 level. We require a lot more effort, and if you look at the encouraging news is last 24 months, whatever the new cancer center or new technology penetration happened, 60% of them in tier 1 and tier 2. That is a very good data point which is encouraging, and sometime last 12 months or 24 months, we also see that sometimes you feel that cancer is spreading very fast kind of thing. People used to tell. So nothing but the awareness is coming up more. Patients are coming early for a detection. Because of that, we are able to now diagnose much more faster.
Yeah, incidence of cancer is rising at a very alarming pace. 1 in 8 patients we diagnose is a cancer patient. 1 in 3 woman is diagnosed as a cancer patient, and 1 in 4 men is diagnosed as a cancer patient. So the challenge is really how to diagnose it early on, so that we are able to not just give a palliation but a curative care to cancer. So Balamurgan ji, how you plan to envisage this? Definitely India lives in villages. Penetration of these high-end equipments in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities is something which we all envisage, and perhaps your thoughts are very much thought on this, that yeah, there is where the population lives. So you are planning to strengthen in those areas to help in early diagnosis?
So if you look at again whatever talked about the problems today, it's not just one single company or medical equipment can go and solve the problem. The cancer, when it comes to cancer, everything is complex. So that's where if you look at a GE, we start working, we are trying to keep it as a partnership is the best model to go and address this issue. So if you look at it last 24 months, we closely started working with the care provider. Like we have recently completed a partnership with American Oncology Institute based in Hyderabad, and we have also Dr. Harith is sitting here. We have also partnership going around with the Max Healthcare. These partnerships are very critical because when we move from metro to the smaller towns like tier 1, tier 2, we are going to have a lot more challenges. One is the skilled manpower availability. Second is bringing in the high-end technology. How do we import a quality care delivery model? So for that, you need to have a lot more new tools need to be developed, like tools like virtual tumor board, which currently we are working with the Max and developing the new tools, protocols, which can be scalable and which can be easily deployable. And second is we also working on, because a center in Bombay buy a same equipment and the same equipment is purchased in Ranchi and a smaller town, the economics going to be different, the viability is going to be different, the patient pay is going to be different. So you require again a different thought. That's where we are also working on a technology where develop a technology, like recently we introduced a product called Discovery IQ, which is a PET CT, which is clearly bringing a affordable as well as quality healthcare delivery model, which can be easily delivered at tier 1 and tier 2 level. So that's where we are going to definitely we will be working with across the care provider partners. We need to have a join hands together and put together a really a operationalized workable protocols, delivery model, everything in the tier 1 and tier 2 cities.
Head on. I'm from Dharamshila Cancer Hospital. We also believe in providing the latest technology first on. Last year we started our latest bone marrow transplant center. Now we are doing haploidentical. So there are certain niche areas which are having demand supply gap, and it is huge. What we have seen in Dharamshila also, now with starting of haploidentical transplant, we are able to offer cures to those patients who would ultimately be the younger generation, and where actually we are able to offer cure also. Cancer is an area where the treatment is much more rewarding if you are actually able to cure the patients, and that by the latest haploidentical technology which we are doing in-house in our country now. Now coming to Dr. Harit sir, your thoughts on the cancer scenario, the surgical scenario in cancer. India, you are master of it. India is the cancer capital for oral cancers, and we have a very high occurrence of breast cancer and cervix cancer. So what is the role of surgical oncology in this per se?
So I'll take from where Bala left, that actually the challenge has to be looked at in totality and not as surgical medical radiation. And I think we should focus on early diagnosis, prevention. Those should be the key as far as the problem is concerned. As far as specifics are concerned, how to treat surgically, medically and other things, it is critical, as you use the word virtual tumor board, to have a collaborative strategy which is actually doable at all levels. Right now, even if we look at big centers, hardly less than 10% of patients actually get discussed and strategy evolved. 90% patients get treated by virtue of a oncologist. So maybe his decision is right. I'm not saying the all decision is wrong. I'm saying that strength of a collective decision making is not there in those systems. So we have to evolve strategies where we come to a right early diagnosis, proper treatment strategy, and a communication to the patient family. Once that happens, then if surgery has to be done, it has to be done by somebody who's trained in surgery. So obviously we do not have so much trained surgical manpower that we can cater to at all levels. Having said that, it is quite doable. That I always call this as false gap. It's a pseudo gap, that people think that they are not trained people, and it is quite possible if people can focus on small areas. Surgeons can focus on small areas. They can get trained at good centers and actually deliver at tier 2 or tier 3 cities. All this is possible in the realm, in a positive approach. If we come out with a strategy, it's doable. In the major metros, we do not have dearth of surgeons and infrastructure and all that. So in that scenario, it's quite different. But again, cost is a major issue. If you look at any government hospital, the queues are long. People can't afford. Doctors are not in those many numbers. So to evolve a strategy, it can actually make all this happen in next 5, 7, 10 years. By 2050, right now we are producing almost 200 surgical oncologists per month in this country, per year in this country. So that is not a very small number. About 5 years back, this number was hardly around 30, 35. So it has grown 6-fold in the last 5, 6 years by virtue of DNBs have gone up. Even MCH programs have doubled the numbers and things like that. So what I'm saying, the government is looking at these things, how to have more and more people trained, but we still need other strategies to have integration of all these things.
I appreciate your point, Dr. Harit. Preventive strategy is the key strategy actually, and 30% of cancers are preventable by adopting healthy lifestyle related strategies like controlling your weight,
Tobacco,
restriction of tobacco, pan masala, zarda, bidi, and having regular exercises, adopting to healthy food habits per se, reducing the red meat intake, increasing the fruits intakes. So, the point is very valid. I appreciate it a great deal. Now, coming to Dr. Chintamani, your thoughts, sir, on the breast cancer scenario, and what your thoughts on this, on the World Cancer Day, how we can reach to 2050 cancer eradication, which we have taken as one of our key goal. Your thoughts, sir.
Thank you very much. I will take a cue from what Harit just mentioned, and also from you when you mentioned about the 2050 target. We haven't forgotten the Alma Ata target that we had established long ago, Health for All by some time. So, the targets are important to motivate you into doing something and achieving it. But having said it, breast cancer is the most common cancer of human race today, and it's fast becoming the most common cancer in Indian women too. There are various aspects to it. There are certain aspects which should make us happy, but the major aspects are basically making us sad on that aspect. The incidence has risen and lifestyle has changed. Many things have changed so suddenly and so quickly in a manner that we cannot actually point to one particular reason for whatever is happening. Having said that, I'm still hopeful that with the kind of approach that people have, and people believe that this cancer is treatable, and a lot of cancers are now coming early and we can actually handle them. The awareness is the aspect that we should be working at, and doesn't matter what kind of a screening model you adopt. It has been established that in the developing world, it's the awareness which is more important. You got to bring down the tumor size to some level before we actually start screening our patients. So, I think on this very important day for the humanity in general, and especially for the developing world in particular, because we are teaming masses. I mean, we are so many people that you got to be treating masses as well as classes. So, that's the gap that Dr. Harit was referring to. Fortunately, we are producing more surgeons, surgical oncologists and other oncologists. So, it is happening in metros, but the villages where the challenges of a medical professional working in the backwaters trying to deliver his best to provide that kind of a care. So, this virtual tumor board looks like the most exciting way we can approach it. So, in that case, these kind of studios would expand into the whole country, and you would actually find people getting an answer to their questions sitting miles away across the sea, and we know it is happening world over. So, we should be moving in that direction where we can actually offer comprehensive care even in the remotest parts. Else, we would have failed miserably in actually making it worse at one end and reaching the excellence at the other. So, we end up being a country of paradoxes, where we have centers which are as good as the best in the world, and we are still struggling to deal with fungating masses of breast. So, it's kind of a miss and match. I mean, we need to be working at both ends to get some kind of a middle path of comfort, where we are able to offer at least a credible, optimum cancer care to an average Indian. And that's what this day should be about, and we should be looking at 2050 with some vision, where all of us can get together and get the rest of the country with us together, so that it can be both centrifugal and centripetal, as they call it. We should be able to send it across, they should be able to get back to us that this is happening. So, feedback on whether we actually have moved would be very, very important. So, I think the future is bright, but it shouldn't be darkness at the other end. That's the only thing we got to look at on this day.
Very well. In our Dharamshila hospital, we started 2 decades back, and one of the USP has been of our hospital, Dharamshila Cancer Hospital, has been our tumor board system, which they just mentioned about virtual tumor boards. And I think somewhere in India we have such a big talent of doctors, and somewhere this marriage of technology and doctors through PACS or through the picture archival, through telemedicine, we are able to link both. Then I think we will become the biggest leaders in this, in actually curing these things early on, detecting these things early on, and somewhere this marriage of talent of doctors and the latest technology, that can really go a long way in benefiting the masses. Now, coming to Dr. Maru, your thoughts about on this World Cancer Day, how you feel as a medical oncologist, as a cancer specialist, what is your vision about it?
See, as far as I see, the facility of cancer treatment and cancer diagnosis, early diagnosis, as Balamurugan said, that 65% of the equipments are in the metro cities, and we have to take care of the smaller cities, tier 2 cities. The second problem in that is that equipments are very expensive and they does not become viable in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So, government should make some effort of subsidizing those equipments or giving them some benefit about taxation, so that these heavy equipment they can be put in a smaller city and they can get the feel of that equipment. Second thing is, government can come up with a public private partnership, where like recently one center in the Visakhapatnam, government of Andhra Pradesh with the Tata Memorial Center, they have opened up a center where 50% is the partner is the state and 50% are the others, and now they are making that a non-profit organization and trying to deliver that small cities. So, there is a need for having such centers in huge numbers. Then only we can deliver these facilities to the smallest of the people at the lowest cost which they can afford, or government subsidizes them, or government provide them a total health care, maybe by insuring everybody. Then only we will be able to reach to that population, and then only we can achieve the goal of our elimination of cancer.
Friends, nowadays the healthcare scenario has changed 360° from curative to preventive strategies, and also in cancer the role of screening, role of self examination and role of annual examination cannot be underemphasized. All of us like roti kapda and makan, today is the age of roti kapda, makan and insurance. If we have to pay our medical bills, if we have to afford a super specialty care in a field like cancer, insurance penetration is also a big thing which will have ultimately help our villages, even our towns, be it pre-class towns, so that people are actually able to afford and pay their bills. Cancer, you know, is a disease where the costs are very high, and the early on you take the insurance, the better it is to achieve your aim to be able to afford the treatment. That is also something which is very important and pertinent. The message of insurance penetration that has to increase in our country. Coming to now Dr. Anupam, bone marrow transplant is something you are master at, and like to have your thoughts on this. Since whatever our experience has been in Dharamshila Cancer Hospital, treatment for leukemia, lymphoma, multiple myeloma, thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, all is possible through bone marrow transplants, whether it is autologous, allogenic or haploidentical. Your thoughts on how hemato-oncology, vision for the hemato-oncology for 2050 cancer eradication?
You know, we have, as we say, as everybody has been reiterating and talking about higher centers being available in our country, where we have centers of excellence delivering perhaps the best of care across the world, but at the same time there is a huge gap between the haves and the have-nots. And to give you an example, not more than 10% of our patients of childhood cancer reach a center which has the wherewithal to treat a patient of cancer. So unfortunately, if we take the total number of cancer patients, of childhood cancer patients, new patients, it's about 50,000 per annum. Not more than 5,000 to 7,000 reach a center which has the ability to treat these patients. So what about the rest of them? And this is what everybody has been talking about, how to reach out to the tier 2, tier 3 cities. Transplantation, hematopoietic stem cell transplantation is one of the high-end procedures, and it requires a huge investment to deliver the goods, because it's not just the transplant, it is the supportive care which goes with the transplant, with the facility for providing microbiological, virological, blood banking. Everything will have to be scaled up. So when you're talking about cancer care, we're not just talking about pediatric oncology or medical oncology or surgical oncology. It has to go in tandem with the scaling up of the facilities, both in microbiology, in basic sciences, in biochemistry, in blood banking, in almost every field of medicine. So you cannot grow in isolation. It has to grow in tandem with the rest of the branches. So we need to have a lot of thinking, and as I said, that out of the box thinking. It's just not a question of providing equipment, providing facilities. It's also a question of human resource development. We do not have, example is pediatric oncology, childhood cancer. We do not have more than 5 or 6 centers in this country which are training formally people in pediatric oncology. So how many can we produce in a year's time? Not more than 15 to 20 in a year's time. How are we going to scale up? We need to do out of the box thinking. Perhaps we need to have the government sending people over for short-term trainings of 6 months, 1 year, wherein these people are able to give what we call as supportive care and what we call as shared care to those people who are traveling from tier 2, tier 3 cities to metros for their treatment. And what happens is that nearly 80% of them drop out because there's a loss of livelihood, there's a loss of income, and there's an increased expenditure because of the cancer by itself. So if we are able to deliver the goods to them, it may not be as great, as fantastic as you would get in a metro, but still some delivery of the goods is done in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, it will make an impact. We will not be able to perhaps save 3 to 4% of those patients who require high-end care, but we in the process will save 20 to 30% of the patients who can perhaps be saved with a low-end care also. That's very important. We should not just talk about level 3 care or tertiary care alone. We can make a difference if we are making a difference at the primary and the secondary level by putting in low-end stuff, people who are not, maybe not as highly qualified as you would need for a transplantation, but are tuned to that kind of a thing with a 6 months training or a 1 year training, and then they go back to their tier 2, tier 3 cities and are able to help us handle our patients at their level so that the loss of income is lesser. And not only that, it's the cost of the treatment in a tier 2 and a tier 3 city is far, far, far lesser than the cost of treatment in a metro city, because in the metro city you add on to the because of the infrastructure cost which is there. So I think we need to have some sort of an out of the box thinking about where, and we should not only have everybody flocking to say Tata Memorial or to Rajiv Gandhi or to Gangaram or to any of these hospitals. We should have a graded referral system which is totally absent now. All India Institute gets swamped with people who are perhaps do not, 90% of them perhaps do not need the facilities of the institute. So their doctors get swamped with stuff which they ought to be dealt with by GPs and by internists or by general surgeons. We need to grade them, send them into specific areas which is totally absent. So that's where the government needs to come in and needs to put in systems in place. There's a total, as we say, there's a total systematic failure of the systems because of this reason.
Friends, in cancer treatment, it is a team approach which pays, and it's not just the role of medical oncologists, surgical oncologists, hemato-oncologists or radiation oncologists. The support for the multi-speciality gastroenterologists, the chest physicians, because these are organ cancers and where the role of specialist also comes a good. So a hospital needs to have, even though a cancer specialist hospital like Dharamshila, our hospital is a cancer specialist hospital, but still we have all other specialties. So backup for the other allied specialties is also very much required when we are talking of curing cancer. Second point, which I think Dr. Anupam made a very pertinent point, it's not just the questions. If we are running a bone marrow transplant center, to make it successful, you need good quality housekeeping people, and their role is even more of paramount importance in today's time, because they are the one who are interacting with patient day in and day out. So understanding that it's not just at the higher level The care is delivered at the nursing, at the housekeeping level also. If we are talking of class 1000 rooms, which we have created in Dharamshila Cancer Hospital in bone marrow, it cannot be successful until and unless we have a good housekeeping team, a good trained housekeeping team who understands the infection of the importance of infection control. Now, coming to the diagnostics, Dr. Sogani, your thoughts on what is the role of diagnostics in curing cancer, in eradicating cancer, your thoughts are on this.
Hi sir. I think diagnostics is the element which can actually drive us to the level where we are talking about. 2050 goal of achieving a cancer-free India or cancer-free world cannot be, the role of diagnostics cannot be underestimated. The only thing which can actually drive us is to detect cancer at a stage when it is still curable, when it is treatable, when it is controllable, and that stage can only be achieved by a program or by different levels. I mean, we need awareness amongst people, we need education amongst people to actually know as to what are we talking about, what this entire forum is actually all about. We need people to understand that how important is loving yourself, loving your own body, how important is to actually go through screening programs at regular intervals. It's not that you should wake up one fine day and figure out a problem which you have been neglecting and ignoring for the last 5 years and springing up and saying that, oh God, I've got cancer now, and what do I do? That's not the way ahead. For us to achieve this particular goal, we really need people to know about what is cancer, what different types of cancers are, what are the screening programs, what is the limitation of these screening programs they're going through, what kind of specific screening programs can they go through. If someone can afford, why not take the best of the screening programs? Screening programs are mainly defined, in fact designed to cover masses. When we say cover masses, we talk about they are designed to cover specific cancer types which are most prevalent in a particular area. They are designed to pick up cancer which has a minimum threshold size, a minimum threshold volume to be picked on, and they also depend upon how the population financial dynamics govern. I mean, areas in which the financial, the economics are not favorable, screening programs are limited to only a general physical examination, and where the affordability comes into play, they go to as high as doing a low dose CT scan for picking up lung cancer in the patients. On the other hand, there are and all these cancer screening programs are mainly designed for a specific purpose, to pick up either lung cancer, to pick up either cervical cancer, for either breast cancer, but there is nothing called as a comprehensive screening program. When you talk about comprehensive screening programs, the problem with them is that they are too expensive, they may not be afforded by the masses. Then they are how frequently do we actually define them? I mean, no work has been done on that particular line to actually comprehensively study cancer in a human body. There are things like gene mapping, genotype study of an entire body, which if an individual who is born is subjected to that particular examination and some certain gene deletions are detected in that particular thing, certain specific actions can be taken to prevent cancer in that particular person. Certain specific screening programs can be designed for that particular person. Every individual is a different person. Every individual is subjected to a different kind of environmental or occupation or genetic predilections to particular cancer. So it's not that a person who is screened for lung cancer will not develop colon cancer, cannot develop. So it has to be a comprehensive approach. Another comprehensive examination could be PET scans. I mean, it's too early to talk about using PET scans as a comprehensive screening tool, but then this is one of the exhaustive ways of actually picking up cancer all across the body in one go. It's so sensitive that a PET scan, in particular a PET MR, is quite safe, does not give too much of radiation to the body, and it can pick up cancer maybe as early as, I would say, 5 years or God knows, and it can safely detect, save time in deciding if a cancer is picked on as to what next to do. It specifically giving all our surgeons and the radiotherapy team and everybody the right approach to be decided using scans like such. What is really important is awareness. Without awareness, we are nowhere. And I mean, we can, no matter how much we talk, how much we chat, but education and awareness are the only two key factors. And of course, the society has to really stand and take a cause that we are here to fight cancer and we need to eradicate it or we need to control it. It's only possible with such
Friends,
specific
what
things.
happens? Right. What role does nutrition plays in cancer control? Dr. Harith, your thoughts on this. What is the role of nutrition?
We all know that unhealthy lifestyle, as you generally said, that increased weight and less exercise, and what generally comes as healthy food, green vegetables, leafy things, all this actually is good for health. Otherwise, junk food, oily, these things, they are not good, and we know that endometrial cancer is high, breast cancer is high with obesity, with increased weight, and colonic cancer is high in Western population because of the high intake of non-vegetarian diet. We also know gastric cancer is high in the coastal areas because of the roasted fish. So there are definite associations of diet and cancer, and we also know northern India is capital of gallbladder cancer of the world, and this is typically on the Ganges belt. So nowhere else. So all these things that we don't know exactly what is the reason, what dietary factors, but we know that there are association factors, and one should take care of these things.
You see, usage of junk food is something which needs to be curtailed, especially in today's generation. The burger culture and the high sugary drinks and consumption of high energy food stuff, this is something which is one of the cause which leads to overweight and ultimately increases the cancer risk, especially starting early on. The overweight the child becomes, and then after that this vicious cycle sets in. Less activity is again one reason. We are all on with computers, and with the activity level, the outdoor sports have gone down. With the result, this again is not a very healthy lifestyle. This also adds up. This is adding to the early generation, and then it is going to ultimately add to the disease load later on. So the adoption of healthy habits early on in the life is absolutely key when we are talking of cancer control. Dr. Chintamani, what causes cancer?
A brilliant question, and actually the answer is very complex. I would just take a leaf out of what Dr. Harith was mentioning, and also what Dr. Rawat was saying. There are some cancers where you can find a direct link. In others, there are indirect links, and in general, it is now, as they say, it's all in your genes. Well, let me not make it so bad and morose. It has got to do with both the genes and the environment that you are in. It's what you eat, it's what you breathe, it's what you think, it's what you inherit, it's what you, what have you, everything. So one doesn't know as to which is the main cause. But like in oral cancer, as Dr. Rawat was mentioning, the tobacco changing to nicotine and the nicotine changing to nitrosamines under the influence of bacteria and local contact. Therefore, the smokeless form is more common. A typical Indian oral cancer is the lateral sulcus cancer because of the quid that they keep, pan masala being a factor. And we of course know about certain genetic bases to various cancers, and there we can actually extrapolate it into other cancers too, that there is definitely a role that we can associate with the genes. In breast cancer especially, the interesting observation that we observed and published some years ago was that there are two peaks of breast cancer rather than one peak which you get in the West, whereas the age advances, you get the incidence is rising. In India, unfortunately, we get two peaks. One is in around 35, 40, that age group. The other one is 60 and around. And the one that you get in the younger age group, that's what we studied, BRCA1, BRCA2 mutation rates were higher. They're more likely to be genetic in that case. And now it is believed in general that the cancer has started in utero. So you are in the uterus and the cancer has actually started, dysgenesis. And the time it takes to show up is the aggressiveness of the cancer. So if you get younger cancers, especially I'm talking about the solid organs, they're bad cancers, they tend to do poorly, they're aggressive. But having said it, there is bankruptcy of thoughts essentially. It's not just about how much you can invest into getting PET scans or getting screening programs. We are not thinking in terms of prevention, otherwise we would have arrived somewhere. One aspect was tobacco, as you rightly mentioned. Second is, if not cell breast examination, clinical breast examination combined with some screening method, we can actually get them younger. When they're still baby cancers, we can manage them. But by and large, the causes are multiple, Like in oral cancer, you have human papilloma virus. In cervical cancer, you have human papilloma virus, different strains. Certain bacteria, certain viruses, the toxins that you eat, the burger cola culture that you were referring to, which actually goes with the lifestyle that we have today, obesity as a factor, then the kind of low roughage diet that people take that predisposes to certain cancers, and lots of alcohol, lots of smoking, lots of everything, even lots of happiness they feel is a problem. So there is a confusion about as to which are the most important causes, but to highlight a few, the genes that you inherit, the environment that you live in, the thoughts that you carry, the lifestyle changes that have happened. We are in a society where actually we are in a hurry to achieve something, and by the time we reach there, it's actually over. So the trouble is, it's a run on a treadmill as far as the lifestyle in the society is concerned. We are going nowhere, but we are in a hurry. So all these factors, including, as you rightly mentioned, the lifestyle, anxiety, the lack of adequate sleep, lack of adequate rest, or too much of rest, etc., they all contribute to various cancers. So it will actually depend on which cancer you are referring to. In certain cancers, we know the cause, etiology, and we can actually prevent them. Oral being a very important cancer there, and that's where we can actually target our efforts. Tobacco should actually be banned in a system. There's no way you can get away by having those little warnings at the bottom. After you've actually chewed your tobacco, you know that there's something written at the bottom. So we are not serious about it, otherwise you definitely achieve it. And these are cancers, especially of the developing world. We need to work very, very hard, in fact harder than the West is actually doing.
Tobacco just not causes only oral cancers, lungs cancer, a lot of other things, nicotine, lot of other cancers also which originate by usage of tobacco. Usage of processed food per se has to be curtailed if we are talking of adopting a healthy lifestyle, a healthy living lifestyle, because only then we will be able to actually reach to that stage, then we are able to reduce the incidence of cancer and also detect cancer early on by adopting all these healthy habits. Now coming to what is the role of positive mind frame, role of psychology. I think this also plays a huge role when we are talking of treating a cancer patient. We have seen in Dharamshila hospital that the role, if the patient comes with a positive mind frame, and there is a positive psychotherapy also which goes along with it, but ultimately if you have a positive mind frame, you are able to deal with that sort of a cancer in a much more positive way, and outcomes also are much better. So a positive mind frame also goes a long way when we are talking of curing cancer, improving cancer. In the technology section, I would also like to ask you, sir, what you feel are the newer technologies which world is looking towards if we are talking of being 2050 cancer free. So what are your thoughts on this?
See, when you look at whether 2050 cancer free, the biggest challenge is going to be, today the cancer is seen as a stigma, it's a terminal illness. How do you move from terminal illness, the feeling, into the chronic? How do we convert it into the chronic and then in this one? So that is the era of technology development or technology innovations, or make a technology as a hero kind of thing, that is gone. Now it is to be get into the more technology development or more innovation in the care delivery and care pathway, the innovation. So that is going to change the way how the medical practice is practiced. There is going to be a sea change in the way medical is practiced today and decade later. So the innovations are going to be, you require a technology development, at the same time there is a lot more innovation in the care delivery pathway. So that's where I see a lot more digital health, home health. These are going to be a lot of new tools and new sensors going to come in, which will pop up maybe 2 decades down the line. Maybe a patient gets a cancer, there will be a sensor pops up, maybe. So that's the kind of thing. It's very difficult. What is today seen as a best practice may not be tomorrow best practices. So there's going to be a huge change, and across the industry is putting all their effort on this one. That's where our initiative also understanding more care delivery pathway. That's what I was talking about, the partnering with the care provider, understanding more detail into it. Is not just bringing in a state of the art PET CT or a 512 slice CT or a MR. It is how you utilize it in the cancer management or a care. So, that is where the innovation is going to be. These innovations are going to be critical. It may be small or big, it is going to be really vital, and it is going to be change the way how the cancer will be treated in the future.
So, friends, cancer is a curable disease, and what we have discussed in this discussion and arrived at the conclusion that by adopting a team approach in which we have specialized doctors, the best usage of technology, adopting a healthy lifestyle per se has emerged out to be a something which we all have built a consensus on, a lifestyle in which we are discarding smoking, nicotine usage of junk food, adopting healthy lifestyles like regular exercises, taking green vegetables, more intake of fruits. All these are going to, and of course educating our younger ones about what are the healthy lifestyle habits by a community approach which is feasible, which is rewardable. All hospitals can put this in as their prime I would say thrust area, through which we reach to the community, organize regular health talks, do more cancer screening, but of course the role of self examination, especially in certain cancers like breast cancer, and of annual examination. Ultimately, if India has to look at 2050 eradication of cancer, or world has to look, the insurance penetration is again something which is of a very high paramount importance. Right now we have in our country 30% private insurance, health insurance coverage, which has to go to 90%. Government also have to increase the GDP expenditure in the healthcare. Right now around 2%, 3%, we have to take it to 5%. So that is also very important, because ultimately it is the public private partnership which is very important when we are talking of eradication of cancer totally from our country. With this, I would like to thank all my esteemed guests of panelists for their very valuable opinion, and thank you all for your viewing. Thank you very much.